Hello, fellow YouTubers and brothers and sisters in Christ. Today I'm going to be reading an excerpt from um, an article written by Jim Hills. It's entitled Reasonable Service. Hope you get something out of it. I can tell Americans when I get off the plane, said my friend Sue, home for a visit. She had been living in Israel. You can tell by the way they walk. How's that? I asked. Arrogant, like they own the place. Do I walk like that? She looked at me, lovely. Of course you do. You're an American. I asked George, one of my students, about this. George had grown up in a village in Mexico. George nodded. Your friend is right. Where I come from, you can't walk like that. You keep your eyes down. You don't go around looking into people's faces, especially police. You must be humble. Such a thought makes Americans bristle. We're not inclined to go about with downcast eyes, even, maybe especially, in the presence of authority. After all, our national identity took shape in resistance to what many colonials regarded as overreaching authority. The signers of the Declaration of Independence blamed King George III for the rift between England and America. He had, they said, violated the rights of colonists and therefore had forfeited their allegiance. Better to die, Patrick Henry thundered, than to submit to despotic power. One of the colonial navy's battle flags dramatically indicated American defiance of imperial authority. A snake coiled, ready to strike, and the legend, "Don't tread on me." And when England finally decided that the war in America was too expensive and perhaps unwinnable, and recognized American independence, the Americans designed a government, the Articles of Confederation, that was so weak it was hardly a national government at all. This arrangement was replaced by the Constitution of the United States, which provided for a stronger central government but had checks and balances designed to make sure that none of the three branches of government could accumulate too much power. I make the point again. Every American-born citizen has grown up in a society that has distrust of authority as its political core. As political core. Several years ago, I spent a summer in England as the guest of a former student. I stayed in an apartment above her boathouse on the Thames. One afternoon, as we sat with a group of her friends, one of them asked about the differences I might have found between Americans and Brits. Well, I said, you seem comfortable with the level of regulation that Americans would not tolerate. I had in mind, for example, the English homeowners had to get permission from one sort of bureau to replace a roof, and if the old roof were thatch, the new roof would be too, no matter how expensive it might be. Eyebrows around the table went up as much as polite Brits would allow. What do you mean? I explained that in America people wouldn't like being told what sort of roof they could have, or what tree on their property could or could not be cut, and in fact disliked what they regarded as any governmental interference in their lives at all. Well, how do you get things done then? My new friends wanted to know. We generally think we can do a better job ourselves than if government gets involved, I explained. The conversation wobbled to a halt and went off in another direction. Clearly, these good English citizens didn't know what to say in the face of such outrageous nonsense, and I didn't know how to make myself any plainer. I'd never felt more American. I'm not suggesting that we Americans are wrong in our emphasis on the rights and freedoms of the individual and our suspicion of governmental power. Such suspicion is well founded, but, speaking for myself at least, American deep-rooted distrust of authority has led to some confusion about our relationship to a God whose authority is absolute. He is not, after all, a popularly elected president. He is King of kings and Lord of lords. His word is law, and while his commandments are not grievous, neither are they negotiable. And if our cultural and political heritage makes us bridle at the thought of being subjects, we positively rebel at the thought of being servants. Paul even spoke of being a bondservant of Christ. Romans chapter 1, verse 1. Jude called himself a servant of Jesus, Jude chapter 1. And it's clear that he did not mean a hired hand who could quit if he felt like it. Given our national experience, our national shame with race-based slavery, it's difficult for us to get past the language. Our racial history has at its center the story of the exploitation of people based on the color of their skin and the hopeless condition into which tens of thousands of victims were born or faced or forced, by criminal activity. We immediately think of people systematically degraded physically, economically, and emotionally, people whose humanity was denied in order that they might be bought, sold, and used like mules or oxen. Reading Paul's words, I used to wonder why God would want to degrade me like that. How could that metaphor, the bond slave, be reconciled with the metaphor of a son, an heir? My reading was, of course, colored by my culture. Then one day Shakespeare enlightened me. In Act 2, Scene 2 of King Lear, the Duke of Kent, a man loyal to Lear, has come to the castle of the Duke of Cornwall, with his wife, who is Lear's daughter, Regan. Cornwall is on the verge of revolt against the aged king. The meeting does not go well, and the angry Cornwall orders, "Fetch forth the stocks." Kent's reply is instructive. "Call not your stocks for me. I serve the king on whose employment I was sent to you." Here's what I took from this. Kent, a man of no means status, himself willingly, gladly set aside his own cares and welfare to serve one greater than himself in another time and another place, another culture. Everyone watching the play understood that this was right. Even more to the point, noble Kent was not diminished in this. Quite the opposite. When he was opposed and threatened, he answered not out of claim of his own status, which was, after all, no greater than that of the rebel Cornwall, but out of the claim of the power and status of the king, on whose employment I was sent to you. Cornwall's offense, then, was not so much against Kent as against the king himself. Alastair Cook, the astute British journalist, who for many years lived in America, once succulently, excuse me, I can't pronounce that word, observed that the U.S. Constitution has one central meaning: no kings. Bullseye. Perhaps our nation's birth, the throwing off of the authority of a broad earthly king, and our association of servanthood with degradation and dishonor, has blinded us to the dignity and power of being a servant of the Most High. Our reasonable service representing the King of Kings endows our lives with beauty, grace, and authority. And one more thing. At the end of our earthly service, we can expect to hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of the Lord." What better way to live? God bless. May He keep you. Keep you peace. God loves you. So do I.